Yeah, I'm, guys, obviously, people who listen to my show, I draw from some, aquifer of mania to like do these episodes. But today I'm just like tired, so I'm gonna try to be less manic the way I usually do in an episode, where I just like draw, some like insane like connections that like right there on the spot. But usually, because I think through problems, but the sense that I completely forgot that I had said that, but I've said it a few times now. I said it to a lot of people, but I was like, what are you talking about? I, this, the, I feel like I can't believe it's such a grad student thing to say. I'm never going to forgive myself, but I need to like reach for Hegel and like to go back to like my grad school, basically religion of like German philosophy and 19th century philosophy and dialectics and Marxism and how history moves forward. And because that's the only overlay that I have to like interpret these events, right? Because I don't, like, humans live in the world as individuals, at least in our area, whatever that means, and we experience the world like through these kind of like prisms of screens and through text, through sort of ideas and images, and now live images, which have like complicated things. And I've talked about all this stuff before. But the sum total of all this is pointing to this event. I know that sounds very I can never say this word, millenarian. It's such a Shia thing to say. Maybe we could talk about that. This is a joke. I'm going to keep running, but like this. That history unfolds across this timeline, and there are moments where you're confronted with what is essentially like the greatest evil to exist in our times. This monstrous evil state with no boundaries, no conscience, pure hate, as like a kind of being of itself, as a state and as a sort of political being, as an entity, as a culture, or whatever. So like that's what I've been trying to hold to, and that's what I meant is that like the structuring anxiety. I later have put it as like the structuring anxiety of my like geopolitical like worldview, for lack of a better word. Like this is it, that like eventually belligerents come to blows, and that's where, in this case, it's terrifying because it's like the country, particularly terrifying for me, but it wouldn't be, obviously it is less terrifying. I don't know. Who knows? Maybe it wouldn't be. What does it matter? I mean, we could talk about that, but the fact that, like I'm getting updates from like people there, and like, it's something that I haven't experienced in my lifetime, because, I've never experienced Iran under a war. Now, what word they use, but, yeah. Okay. Yeah, so this has been something that like I've thought about a lot, and it feels like, yeah, that this 40-year long, almost 45-year long war with the US empire, mediated through its tip of the spear, its like most vicious attack dog, proxy military base, forward operating military base, infused with this like Jewish supremacist, uber nationalist, ultra fascist, like murderous, genocidal political state that like proudly announces itself as the antithesis of everything that are supposedly liberal democratic states for. But that doesn't trouble us. And in fact, like, we give them more weapons. So this is one of those moments where what metaphor can I reach for? I don't know, like when you rip the husk of a corn and you see into like the truth of, the delicious, sweet truth of corn, that yeah, this world is dominated and not ruled by, but dominated by this vicious imperial beast called the United States, that one of its chief enemies and targets is this country called the Islamic Republic of Iran, that over the course of its existence from 1979 onward, that it's faced various U.S. wars, unceasing U.S. wars that have unfolded through different phases, that unfolded through like a myriad of, strategies or whatever. So there was like the direct proxy war fueled by Saddam. Everybody in the region supported it. Iran was alone, except for Syria and a little bit of help from North Korea. I think also Libya gave a few missiles, maybe. I have to piece it together. But these were the origin story of the Islamic Republic as a state, right, and how it was sort of arisen out of the Iranian Revolution of 1979 and this kind of like growth to where it is now. I don't think that, especially for me, someone who's lived outside of the country for all my life, that like I have an only like tenuous connection to through individuals and through like texts. And even then it's like pretty surface. I always have to say this. Like I'm not an Iran news guy. Like I'm not like a follower. I don't like study, like that I'm like an amateur in this stuff. If only because my kind of focus has been other places, let's say. So in terms of Iranian domestic stuff, I couldn't actually even tell you like the basics. Like I couldn't really tell you. I was like, who? Like I knew one of the guys who got martyred, Shamkhani, I think. I can't even say his name. It's like, oh, I recognize that name because I've never seriously engaged the actual figures, with the exception of a few. Because to me is that like I'm looking at this from like a greater distance, and the actual characters are not so interesting to me because I'm not like my depth in all of this. So anyways, that aside is that like I think in some ways I'm here to like this is such a goofy sports term, but to like do a color man analysis and to situate this, I think, across a broader scope, that you have that since Alexa Flood, October 7th, the launch of it, this daring commando raid, that provoked, in a sense, this insane response from basically the like not just Israel, but the entire West, through whom Israel receives all of its power, right? That it's like this dependent entity on all of the major powers across the world, in various ways. I mean, even including Russia and China, by the way. That their dependencies are open, and yet their ability to evade all kinds of their exceptional status as a country, as a political entity, is just written off. And meanwhile, and this is the perverse thing, and I'll kind of leave, I'm so tired, I'll leave it at this. I'm not going to do my usual rant. I was like just getting started, but now I'm like half putting myself to sleep. But it's something that I'll talk about it, and I just forgot it. Oh, here it is. It's back. That this entity and Iran are so intimately linked now. Like we are so intertwined with their shitty fucking history of 70 years of nothing, of unaccomplished nothingness, of like parasitically siphoning off of all of its people, everything from other places, other people, because that's what you do when you're like a manufactured country, which is what they were. Right, which is what they will always be. So the crux there in the purpose of that manufacture, and I'll kind of that the purpose of that manufacture, which is to use as a base of imperial powers to rule over the most energy-rich, geopolitically important chunk of Asia, where this massive country with immense resources, almost 5 decades ago, became independent and broke away from what was and what has remained a regional chokehold, right? There is no more sovereignty left in the region. It's just Iran, Yemen, South Lebanon, a little bit, and that's it. So sovereignty in our region is what this is about ultimately. And that's kind of like the wide frame analysis. And unfortunately, we are locked in this thing with this disgusting, racist ethno-state, tip of the spear, psychotic, unhinged, whatever adjectives you can throw at it, probably stick. So it just keeps haunting me, all of this history. And finally, we've come to the point where it's like coming home, as it were, to Iran and to, the crown jewel of the imperialists, in a way. So I don't know if that made any sense. I have very little to contribute to the actual events unfolding, other than the Zionists excel and imperialists excel at assassinations, murder, like terrorism, blowing up things, destroying things. These are things states can do to each other because there's no real thing called missile defense. There is a little bit, there is to some degree, but at the end of the day, if you want to kill people from far away, you can make it happen. It's the consequences of doing that keep you from doing that. So it's not the capability, but for some reason, the imperialists decided that the consequences of these actions are now acceptable. So people screaming about like, oh, deterrence, Iran has lost deterrence. Oh, deterrence, deterrence. It's like, no, bro, you can't deter somebody who wants war. They declare war. That's why. And that's what this was. That finally we're in this phase, this culminating phase. And all my like literary guy brain, I can't even begin to fathom it in terms of like implotment of all this. Because, you know, after this, there's no more independent countries in the region, guys. Like, that's like, let's be clear. Like, you know, I have all faith in the Yemenis, but there is ultimately like, this is like these three countries, like this last stand of the countries is like the Middle East's like culmination. And maybe that's wrong. Maybe like there's a whole moment from here that people just back away. I don't really see that happening, but I'm going to put that out there. That could be one of the thing. Anyways, now I'm really rambling. Okay, I'll stop.